Okay, good evening, everyone. Sorry, we're running a bit late tonight. I've been chasing foxes today. Tonight we are with Chris Adams. Chris is a local identity and lovely chap that I've become friends with since meeting Chris. Chris has been a homeless man on the streets for over 17 years, haven't you, Chris? And travelled all around the countryside.
Watching or listening.
Yeah, travelled all around the countryside being homeless as well. So he's a wealth of knowledge, and we're here to dispel some of the myths of homelessness and some of the truths, and make the public understand a little bit more about what it's like living on the streets, and a bit more about homelessness and the misconceptions that people have among the community. So thanks very much for giving up your time, Chris. I know you're passionate about this subject and you want to really help people.
My pleasure, Sonia.
So I guess we'll start off with a few myths first. And one of the main myths that I get the most annoyed about when you hear of homeless people is people say they all want to be homeless. They don't want housing.
Oh, for the large majority of homeless people, they don't want to be homeless. And I've always said that for the better part of them, it's very important to house people within the first 3 months before they become entrenched in homelessness. If a person remains homeless for 6 to 12 months, what you find is they start to accept their life out on the streets for what it is. You very much lose hope very quickly and start to believe that you're going to die out there. Nothing's ever going to change for you. You engage with the services, example towards home, you fill out the paperwork, you do intakes, but unfortunately you never get housed because the system is broken.
That is true, and this is what I say too. Early intervention is imperative, isn't it?
It is. Early intervention is absolutely imperative.
And the longer you're out on the streets, the more you accept your lot in life. I can only tell your story to so many people so many times before you get, and nothing happens. So you get disillusioned. You think, oh, stuff it, I might as well stay here.
Well, I know personally that's what had happened for me.
Yeah.
Before I engaged with you, government ministers like Nat Cook and Housing SA were forced to house me. But otherwise, you really do accept that your life is out there on the street.
Well, how do you? We'll stay on this subject for a while. I mean, what's it like for you now that you've got a unit for the first time in several years?
It's still very hard. Today is actually 6 months to the day.
Oh, is it really? Oh, congratulations!
Today was 6 months, the 24th of April, when you met me here to sign the lease for this place.
Yeah.
And as I've previously discussed with you, it's the simplest things like having a bed. Most people wouldn't realise. I try to go to bed at night and it's not the concrete, it's too hard. Sorry, it's too soft. Sorry if I'm...
Because you're used to sleeping on concrete, yeah.
I'm very much used to sleeping on concrete. And then you get on a bed and it's too soft, you sink into it, you toss and turn, you can't fall asleep.
It reminds me of the Three Bears story.
It is. This bed's too soft, this bed's too hard. Excuse me. The silence alone at night, I'm so used to going to sleep with traffic around me, the noises. Sleeping with one eye open, I actually find myself constantly coming out and checking out the curtains when I hear a noise.
Yeah.
Like I was still homeless on the street.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a bit of a funny one, that. But I'm very much struggling. You have to get used to having a sense of normality again. Doing a regular shop and not going to all the charities. I find myself, like tonight, the dinner would have been on out at Salisbury. And I quite often think, I should go to one of the dinners, but then I think, no, don't do it. Try to move forward. And that's a difficulty for every homeless person that gets housed that I've spoken to. They all say the same thing. You become used to the spots that you go to. It's that lifestyle, the people the places that food. Going to the Vinnie's Van in town every night, or whether you go to the Lutheran Church at Paravista, or
it's a routine, isn't it? That routine you miss. Yes.
And interacting with people, and then all of a sudden you're not interacting with people anymore, and this is
Do you feel a little bit more isolated now that you're in a unit?
Oh, most definitely.
Yes.
Most definitely isolated.
Yes.
And I was going to say that for the better part, most homeless people, what happens is after an extended period of homelessness, and this is why it's imperative to get people off the street within, I say, 3 to 6 months. That's the time frame I give it. I always tell the services, you've got to try to remove the new ones off the street before you target the long-term guys.
Yeah.
You know, once someone's been out there for a year, 2 years, plus, you know, in my case, it was 17 years on and off. What happens is when you return to, you know, normality, like community, you get your own place, you start to seek out your old friends. Now, what happens there is your old friends, the ones that you would have had pre-homelessness, they've all moved on with their lives. You know, they've had all their special times, they've created new memories, and you're no longer a part of that. And you might go around and visit one, and the first thing that you find yourself doing is talking about your homelessness period.
Yeah.
And they very much don't understand that, and you get that sense from them of sort of a little bit of fear almost. That they're like, whoa, you know, like, oh my God, like they don't quite really know why you're talking about what you're talking about. You know, it's not unusual for them to talk about homelessness. And I find myself just trying to educate people on that, even my friends. And so you find that the friends that you developed out on the street were your new friends.
Yep.
And so you miss that sense of community amongst the people that you knew at those services.
Yep.
And that was your new normal.
Yes.
But if you've housed people within the first 3 months, then they've got a much better chance of reintegrating back into their original friend groups,
yes,
their family, their community that they had, going back to what they knew as the previous normal.
Yeah.
And to talk about the myth that people think people want to be homeless. No one, like you've said, nobody grows up going, oh, I'm going to be homeless.
Yeah, exactly. I want to be homeless. I choose to be homeless.
That's not a thing. Now, for a very small minority, and I'm talking a very small minority, who do choose it, but they choose it for reasons of their own, I guess. You know, I'm not going to label anything.
Well, a lot of it's to find that, I can't remember the word, that psychology word I wanted to use, but a lot of it is to stop the suffering. Once you accept the fact that this is your life, you stop that stress stops, you know.
It very much does. Your first 3 months on the street, you very much live in fear a lot of the time. That's why you walk into Rundle Mall and you'll see, or any mall in any major capital city, and you'll see the people who sleep on the benches. And for your first few months, you think that that's your safe space, out on a bench, in the public light, in the main mall, where everybody can see you. But after a period of time, you start to realise that that's probably more the dangerous place. You know, sleeping in a public mall on a Friday or Saturday night, you might get the people who are, you know, intoxicated and they walk by, and they're more likely to hassle you than if you find yourself a nice little dark spot in a doorway down a side alley somewhere. You know, you're still going to get the foot traffic, but more than likely you're going to get the people who will just walk on by. And so you start to lose that fear, and that's when it becomes normalised with you to be homeless. You've accepted being on the streets, you've lost the fear every day. And it's as you start going to the services, just as it becomes normal to you.
It becomes a way of life. It becomes habitual.
It becomes a way of life. After 12 months,
and then it's familiar to you. And once it's familiar to you, it feels safer.
It does. And after 12 months out there, you are very much. I can't quite find the word I'm looking for here. I had all this earlier today when I was thinking about it. You are. That's your life now on the streets after 12 months. This is what you know. This is. What,
exactly, and we were talking, actually, I was talking to somebody the other day, and we were saying that a lot of the people that I look after on the streets have a real sense of community where they are, and they've built up relationships with people that are living around them as a homeless person. And once we put them into a house, they're going to feel isolated all over again. So what we need to do is we need to make sure that when we put them in those houses, that they're going to have that ability to make new networks and have that sense of community by either providing them with some sort of employment as well as housing, or putting them into some sort of day thing or options of some sort where they're going to have be able to meet new friends and create those networks over again, because they're leaving them behind.
When I spoke to the services about 5 years ago, it was Street Home before they were to Woods Home, and they put a working group of us together on suggestions that we might have for once people were housed. And one of the important factors I raised with them was, once you house people, you can't just simply dump them into housing and leave them on their own there.
No.
You need to provide support to those people for at least the first 6 to 12 months.
Yep.
But even when they did it, they only provided 2 visits a fortnight for an hour at a time.
Yep.
And well, that's of no use to a person who is there 24 hours now in a home alone by themselves. And then you get all the suggestions like join a community group, volunteer, find a men's shed. And that's very much, it's no good, like those sorts of suggestions. I really struggle for words here. Joining a men's shed, for example, you go to a men's shed and a lot of the men are 50 plus years old, and you can't suggest that to a young man. So I started to realise putting people in housing and then trying to provide support was a bit more difficult than what it actually seems. You need to target each individual differently. You need to actually sit down and find out.
Yeah, one size doesn't fit all, does it?
Definitely doesn't fit all.
No,
who they are.
everything's got to be tailored to that person.
Yeah, tailored.
And that, unfortunately, is not what the system does.
No,
it's
not
one
at all.
size fits all, and if you're not, very, very strong and very forthcoming at advocating for yourself, you get nothing.
No, well, you look at the services that do it, like Anwar, Towards Home. They're simply a brokerage service in between Housing SA and whatever homeless service originally referred them to that service. Like, if it's Salvation Army referring you to Anwar, or Hutt Street Centre referring you to Towards Home. So you go from the service that you knew to the brokerage agency who you do intake with, who then advocate on your behalf with Housing SA, and then you have a day where you come around and sign the lease, and Towards Home might send someone out to be with you, to help move you in, provide you with some furniture, but then they simply leave you on your own.
And that's why a lot of these placements don't work.
No, they don't at all.
Because their person is left isolated again, no purpose, no community connections, no job, and they feel isolated all over again. And it's much more fun out in the streets because I've got a network of people out there that know me.
It's not that it's the fun of the streets, it's more having that support network.
That company, yeah.
I go back into town twice a fortnight now. And the first thing I find myself doing, and I tell myself I shouldn't, but the first thing I find myself doing is going and finding the people that I know, or the other homeless that are still out there, because they're my friends, they're the people that supported me while I was out there.
Exactly.
They are my community.
Yes.
You might have, just as an example here, sorry to give so many examples, but you might find a night where you went to Fred's van and somebody didn't get there in time to eat. And so afterwards, that person might find your group wherever you're all hanging out. And as a community, what we always did, everyone would pull out their change and make sure that that person ate. You'd send them off to get a burger at Hungry Jack's. Everyone would chip in whatever they had. No one went back to their blankets hungry. Yep.
So that was that real camaraderie. It's a real community there. Yeah.
We all supported each other.
Yeah.
If somebody's down and out, if somebody's feeling depressed, if somebody's sick, you'll find the group gather around and support
Exactly.
them.
Where if they're in a house on their own, they don't have that support.
No, you don't have it at all.
So you can't just, sometimes you can't just plop somebody in a house and leave them. And you're right, they need a lot of support and they need an alternative sense of community. I mean, yes, they can use that as a base and still go out and see their homeless friends and go home as well too. But sometimes it's not that easy because you don't feel like you belong in either world anymore.
I say to people, the silence in a house is deafening.
Yes.
That's why I have a lot of problems sleeping at night now, even after 6 months. It's my first 6 months back in here after quite a few years of getting out. And yeah, at night time, I find myself now putting on a fan. I put the radio on low just to have a bit of white noise in the background, you know, so I can sleep at night.
Yep.
And I'm only getting a 2 or 3 hours sleep in the early hours of the morning.
Yep.
And I'm hoping with time that improves.
Yeah.
But it's something that every homeless person who gets housed will go through, that sense of isolation,
Yep.
the sense of silence, the sense of having to adjust to being part of normality again, I call it.
Yep.
You know,
We'll discuss these sorts of things more as we go through, but another myth that I find sometimes, and I myself don't know sometimes how to answer this one, so I'm interested in your take on this one, is never give a homeless person money because they're either going to buy drugs or alcohol with it.
Right, now you know my strong views on this one, as we've actually discussed this before, and it's something that I've always liked to try to educate people on. This is a huge myth, if you will. It is so important that you give homeless people money, and I say this for a reason. You imagine that it's a cold, wet night out there, a person sitting in a doorway. They're lonely, they're depressed, they're upset. Now, myself, I have never abused any substances, I don't drink. I had nothing to get me through the nights out there, and I found myself quite often crying. Now, I've always said to people, they go, oh, look, he's got a cask of port, he's begging, he's going to get alcohol or drugs. So what, right? People don't, they need to go out there and live it for themselves. They have no idea what it's like. You'll never see a homeless person with a $70 bottle of bourbon, but what you will see is a person with a cask of wine. Now, the person that sits out and begs, you walk by and you might give them $5, or some people will, and then they walk by and they're still sitting there and they're still gathering money. Now, you get these people that go, oh, I'm not going to give a homeless person money, I'll give them some food, but I'm not going to give them money. Well, most normal people, housed people, they have the luxury of a fridge in their kitchen and a drink by their bedside. Homeless people don't have that luxury. Housed people have the luxury of being able to get up in the morning on a cold morning, doesn't matter what the time is, 5, 6, 7 a.m. and make themselves a hot coffee. A homeless person doesn't have that luxury. If you have to take into account that Hutt Street Centre doesn't open in the morning till 7 a.m. Now, on a cold winter morning, if a homeless person finds themselves waking up at 5 a.m., $5 makes all the difference. They're able to go into Hungry Jack's or McDonald's, buy themselves a hot coffee, and as long as they've become a consumer and spend some money, the staff don't mind them sitting in there in the warm for a few hours until, say, Hutt Street Centre opens. Now, a homeless person, the myth of not giving money and just giving food. Well, most people don't know what sort of food to give anyway.
Well, that's true.
Just accept anything.
Exactly, exactly.
Whatever we give you should be happy to take.
Yes, exactly.
I'm quite passionate about this one.
Yep.
But again, what the money does, let's say a homeless person, in theory, just sits there, and I'll just put a figure on it, they gather $70 together. Now, I can damn well guarantee you, I'm sorry about the language, but damn well guarantee you that that homeless person is going to keep some of that money for a hot coffee the next morning. They're probably going to buy, some small food items, like maybe a few chocolate bars or a packet of chips. They're going to buy themselves Hungry Jack's or McDonald's that day. The minute they get up, the first thing they're probably going to do is go and get a burger if somebody hasn't already given them one. And they're going to make sure that they've got a drink, buy their blankets or their swag. But for the guy that does go and get a bit of port, like you quite often see these elderly gents, the ones who are 65 plus, 70 years old, and people discriminate against an elderly gent who might be sitting in a doorway and he's had quite a bit to drink. Well, on that cold night, as I said before, when we found ourselves out there, the homeless, then on a cold, wet night. After midnight in town, there is no foot traffic. During the day is the time when you've got foot traffic and you can get out and make a few dollars. After midnight, if you're still awake, there is no one around to talk to. There is no one who's going to stop by and sit down and keep you company. And all you want to do is numb yourself out to it. Now, for the guy that, buys himself a cask of port, I'm sorry, I don't discriminate against him at all. If that...
You're still helping them survive, aren't you?
If that few drinks...
That helps them survive out there.
The street into a magical wonderland, so
Yeah,
they can forget their homelessness for a few hours.
Exactly, yeah.
Then there's I'm sorry, nothing wrong with it at all. The average guy can go to the bottle aisle at the end of the day and buy himself a 6-pack of beer. But the guy who's on the street can't numb his pain by spending $5 to $7 on a cask of port that he bought at the Woolies, that bottle that Woolies always have next door to them. Because I don't drink, I don't know the names of the places. But there's always, as for example,
I know what you
Plaza,
mean. Yeah.
there's the bottle
The
Liquorland.
Liquorland.
Like Liquorland.
Yeah, those sorts of things. Yeah, yeah.
Now,
there's a Dan Murphy's or a
well, you always find, like in Brundle, for example, they go to the Woolworths Liquor Plus, it's called, or something like that. At Tea Tree Plaza.
But you just raised a very, very, very good point. I mean, why is it okay for somebody that's living in a house to have a 6-pack of beer, but the guy on the street can't buy something to numb his pain, to get him through the night?
He has a bed to go to. He has a nice warm house. The guy on the street, and like I said before, you will never ever see them with this top of the line $70 bottle.
No, they don't. No, they don't spend a lot of money. Cheap stuff. Yeah.
Port that they can find because they're trying to keep a bit of money in their
Well, at the
pocket.
moment, I've got one that drinks White King bleach. You know, because it's
and
cheap.
Just to continue on this subject for a little bit.
Yeah.
Now, what some people will say, you've got two other lines of thought here from the normal housed folk. Okay, so I'm not going to give him money, I'm going to give him food. Now, as I've said to a lot of people who give food to the homeless, just think about being on the street. A person on the street doesn't have a little hot cooker, like a camp stove, sitting on Rundle Street to cook some hot food that they might give them, like baked beans or spaghetti in a pot, or a microwave to cook it in. No, I'm being real here.
I know. Everybody wants to give cans of food.
They give cans of tuna without realising that, well, there's a percentage of people that will eat canned tuna, there's a percentage who wasn't. Oh, well, if you're not going to eat what I give you, then you can go hungry. So, well, you know, it varies from individual to individual, it really does.
Yeah.
But I can tell you, when somebody used to walk up to me and they'd taken 5 minutes out of their day to go in and buy me a cheeseburger, that meant the world to me. To get a hot cheeseburger or a hamburger of some sort.
Did they ask you first what you wanted, or did they just buy?
Some people don't. Like the odd person will come and be,
Is it a good idea to say, can I get you something? What would you like?
It is. It actually always is.
Yeah.
But it's always a kind gesture if you get them some food to maybe give a few dollars with it as well. Because that person isn't sitting out there to actually, you don't wake up and think, oh, I'm going to go out and beg with my beanie and a sign to get food. You know, I'm going to try to, you have a figure in mind, and I know how bad that sounds, but you have a figure in mind of what you'll need. You know, I want a Powerade by my swag. I want to keep
it's promoting some sort of independence.
It is.
And independence of choice.
You get a bottle of Powerade, for example, just for the daytime. Now, what I used to do was, as the Powerade started to get empty, I started to go to a fountain and fill it back up again and keep some sort of flavoured drink on myself all day long that I could stick in my backpack.
Make it go further.
You know? If people want to give a bag of food, like, you know, I would get people that would go to Coles and they come back and they've got noodles and loaves of bread and baked beans and spaghetti, and one girl had a big carton of spring water. Like they think that we're sitting around in one spot all day, you know. Like,
will that fit in your backpack?
But
it's sweet, and it's very kind of the people. But it is better to ask.
It is much
better to ask. What do you need? What can I get you?
That's right.
Yeah.
And people still need to consider that it's so important to give money, because that allows, like I've said, on a cold, wet morning, it allows a homeless person to go into Hungry Jack's, because this is where I would always go in the morning.
Yeah.
When I was sleeping on Rundle Street in the Target fire doors, I would wake up at 5 a.m. in the morning, and I would hope, if I didn't already have some money from the day before, I would desperately hope to find some change under my my backpack. I use my backpack as my pillow. And people would put the money underneath my backpack, or they'd try to put it in your blanket. And you'd wake up and you'd be like,
the
oh
tooth
my God,
fairy.
Yes, somebody's left me some change. And you run quicker than anybody has possibly run before to Hungry Jack's to get yourself that hot coffee. For breakfast.
Giving money is important.
It is. The hot cappuccino in the morning means the world to any homeless person, drinker or not.
Yeah.
That means the world.
Yeah.
Now, they might think that you spend it on something like smokes. Well, I can guarantee you no homeless person actually spends money on smokes, because a guilty habit of homeless people, and this becomes a normal part of what normal is on the streets, we start to pick up bumpers. And that becomes part of our daily routine, a bit of a mission. And we feel like we've found treasure when we find the big bumpers, the big cigarette butts, you know, and we collect them in every homeless person we see will just about carry an old couch around, and we collect those. And that's our stash.
Do you take them apart or do you smoke them as is? You take them apart.
You put the tobacco into a couch and then you re-roll it.
Yes.
And so you do that to avoid spending any money on smokes because no homeless person in the world wants to go and spend $35, $40, $50 on a pack of smokes.
No.
That is actually seen as a bit of a waste of money.
Or they bum cigarettes off people.
That's what there are the minority that bum cigarettes, but that is very looked down on by most other homeless people.
Yes, it is, but they do. Some do it.
It makes
some of the younger ones do.
They do. But it makes the general community of homeless look bad because we try to be as self-sufficient
It does,
possible.
yeah.
So giving money to a homeless person is so important.
Right.
You know, and if a homeless person could sit and gather hundreds and hundreds of dollars, I guarantee you they would no longer be on the street that night. They would be in a hotel somewhere in a room, or they would put themselves in somewhere. But that's not the case.
The one thing I've noticed too, Chris, is that homeless people are extremely generous. And they all, if they have a bit of money, will help each other. If somebody doesn't have food or if somebody hasn't had a drink, you know, and I've often seen people pool their money together. You buy the food this week, I'll buy the food next week. We'll have takeaway, you get it the week after. And they pool their money.
Well, we tend to do it out of whoever gets paid next.
Yes, exactly.
But it's more, I mentioned what I mentioned before about missing Fred's van, because one night I missed Fred's van. And I went back to the State Library, which was where we all gathered after Fred's van. And a few people said to me, they said, "Oh, you weren't at Fred's van?" I said, "Yeah, I'm going to have to go hungry tonight." And everyone gathered their change together. They made sure that I did not go back to my swag without eating. We help each other out. And you might not even be homeless. You might be a general member of the community, down on your luck. You've lost your Metro card or whatever it might be, and you need some change to get home. If a homeless person hears that you're just trying to get home, we will pull some money out of our beanie, of whatever we've collected, and give them enough to go buy themselves a Metro card and put some credit on it to get home.
Yeah. Look, I've found homeless people extremely generous, and I've even had them wanting to buy me gifts. And I say, don't you dare. You keep every cent to yourself. Don't you buy me anything. I don't need anything.
That's a common thing.
But they do. They want to buy you things. I say, no, don't do that. And the generosity of them is beautiful.
It's paying back what the community have done for you. You know, and you know yourself, I've been gifted by the community quite a lot, especially in Teacher Gully. When I simply wanted, one weekend, I simply wanted a little cup of milk, and the community came out in force. And that's where I learned the community were able to show that they can do more than any service or any charity can do when they pull together for a cause.
Yeah.
You know, and so you find yourself wanting to give something back, and you get a lot of people who no, you know, you don't be there like you have, and they want you to sort of, you know, keep what you have for yourself to try to get yourself back on your feet. You know, which is, it's the community just showing how amazing they are, how much they care.
They do. They are amazing.
Sometimes they need to accept.
But they need to be educated on what to provide too. And getting on to the next subject, is that a lot of people believe, that I've found anyway, that that people believe that any old thing will do for a homeless person. They should be grateful for anything. Now, that's not true, and that people out on the streets do actually have taste.
Well,
and they like nice things the same as anybody else. And know your second-hand Uncle Joe that just dyed's trousers is not really all that suitable.
Exactly right. But I'll go on two different areas here, food and clothing. So I will include you in this. As Sonia has learnt, that I have credited Sonia in this community with doing what no one else has been doing. And I did this 2 days ago with a gentleman on a certain page who had been told certain things that were wrong. Sonia, if no one on here is aware, Sonia comes out every weekend on the Saturday and Sunday and delivers food to the homeless. Now, 6 months ago, I was sleeping in my car that I had just got. Before that, I was in a church doorway across at the church on Montague Road across from Teacher Gully Library. I had come from town and started sleeping at Mobbery because I wanted to come home again, and Mobbery for me was home. Now, on a weekend, there was no food available. There was no breakfast, there was no lunch or dinner to be found. There were no charities in this area open. So unless you went to town and exposed yourself to the violence of somewhere like Fred's Van, you went hungry on a weekend unless you had some money in your pocket. Now, Sonia has been out delivering food. And so originally when Sonia first came out, and sorry to name you in the third person here, but I'm talking to everybody else here, Sonia was bringing out food that, you know, she wasn't quite at that stage, or no one had presented to Sonia, as I should say, that, you know, maybe try giving this or that, you know, educating on the foods that we like. And, you know, people would say that's picky or choosy, but it's not. Everyone might have a different dietary requirement, you know, so...
And I listened and I talked to people and I soon got to know what people wanted.
You did. You very much got to know what people wanted. But I suggested to you that, you know, throw in some snacks like little chocolate bars, maybe a few packets of chips, some biscuits, things like that, some little goodies. Like, the average person has this at home. And the most uplifting thing in the world, if someone gives you a bag with tuna, baked beans, spaghetti, you're like, oh, okay. You know, it sort of breaks your heart a little bit. You thought you were going to get some good food to eat, and then your heart gets broken. And then Sonia started asking, on suggestions from me and maybe a couple of others, you know, of what we might like. And so now we get a hot meal that is, you know, might be sausages and mashed potato and peas, or buttered chicken and rice, which was one of Sonia's most amazing meals. And she always carries a bag of snacks, and with me, Sonia knew I love the coffee biscuits, so she carries a supply of coffee biscuits. You know, but she carries little bags of chips, just those little miniature bags of chips that big. She carries
frozen
those,
water bottles, Cokes.
Yeah, frozen water bottles. And the frozen water was my saviour on hot nights. To once a fortnight be able to buy myself a bottle of cordial, and then try to find water became hard. To have to walk across a park at 3 o'clock in the morning to a tap. But then Sonia started providing the frozen water, and so on a hot night that was 38 degrees plus, you were able to not just make yourself a bottle of cold drink up, but the frozen ones would stay frozen overnight, so you were able to keep the frozen bottles next to your main bottle of cordial to keep it cool. And that provided you with a drink. And to educate people on this, never provide hot coffee on a cold night. A huge mistake I found of people is at night time during winter to provide hot coffee. Well, imagine not having a toilet to go to, and the hot coffee goes through your body, and you find yourself within hours desperately in need for a toilet.
Yeah, and they'll close at 9 o'clock.
Well, in the case of the Civic Park toilets, yes, they close at 9 o'clock. And so hot coffee is something that you don't want to give. You know, that's
just in the mornings, when you've got access to the toilets.
That's right, when you've got access to the toilets.
Well, I'm glad you like my food now. I'm glad I've come up in the world of cooking.
You know, so I say to people, it's good to give food, but maybe just ask a person, you know, what would you like? You know, if you're going to go into a shopping mall for them, a simple packet of chips with $1 chocolate bar. Most chocolate bars now have $1 range of chocolate bars, or $1.20. You know, chuck 1 or 2 of them in.
Look, I've found that it's been quite challenging for me, because I try and think of, when I do cook, I try and think of things that are easy to eat, because I know that a lot of people out there on the street have teeth issues and mouth issues.
They do
so,
very much.
Yeah, so I make sure that whatever I cook is easy for them to eat. I make sure that there's plenty of nutrition in. I often add nutritional yeast and stuff like that to my meals, you know, because, you know, a lot of homeless people really don't get the B12 that they need. So I always put nutritional yeast in any hot food I cook. And I try and keep the meals interesting, and, you know, that people are going to like. And I find out dislikes, like this one doesn't eat fish, that one's Muslim, so can't eat pork, and this one, this and that. And I find out everyone's dietary needs, and then I try and cater for all of those people. And it's not easy, not an easy thing to do, to come up with a menu each week that is going to be different and that everybody's going to enjoy. I think I've done that fairly well, because I do put a lot of thought into it.
You've done that very well over time now, you know, and what you provide is exactly what I find homeless people would be wanting or needing.
Well, they miss the home cooking. They miss the home cooking
They
of,
do,
you know, mums or
very much
grandmothers'
do.
home cooking, and that's what I try and stick to as
Yeah,
much as
somebody gives you
possible.
a little silver container,
Yep.
one of those Chinese containers that you give, and you open up and you see some sausages and gravy with mashed potato and peas. As long as somebody's provided a plastic knife and fork with it, you look at it and you go, wow, like that is like a home cooked meal, you know. And you've missed that for so many years. It might be what your mother used to cook.
Yes.
You know, one of the meals she would cook. So,
Yeah.
you know, it's extremely valuable.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's like a community where you need to go out, like the first rule of community development, for instance, is to ask the community what they want. Don't just assume that you know, because you're a homeless person, that you know what they are going to need. And let's go on to the next subject there, where, you know, all homeless people should have a beanie and a scarf that the lady from the local crocheting group is knitting for them. And it's done with beautiful intentions. These gorgeous ladies are, you know, wanting to provide for homeless people, not realising that they don't get used.
Look, it's amazing that people want to provide for the homeless, but again, it's like the food. You've got to ask. And then even when people ask, they have this dismiss, oh no, like, trust me, they get used. It's like, well, you need to come out and do it for yourself because you don't have a clue, and that's not to be rude to anybody. But I have still got my black beanie, as you know, from the street. It has become one of my most valued possessions because on the street you don't have much. But as far as a beanie goes, we want something that we can both pull over our eyes at night for darkness, and we want a beanie that is going to keep warmth in. Now these knitted beanies, now it's amazing that they do it, but these knitted beanies, they have all of the holes in them across the top and sides. They're more like a tea cozy, the way they're knitted.
And they're usually bright colours of wool too.
And we don't want
which is not
yellow,
modern.
green, red, blue. They very much stand out. You know, a dark colour is what you want. A grey, brown, black beanie.
Yeah.
You want something that's one piece, thick,
very tight
and
knitted.
pull over the eyes to the nose level so that it keeps the darkness in at night. Not just for darkness reasons, but also for reasons that you can block the world out. And that when people walk by you, because there is that stigma of being in a doorway homeless, and so what you can't see, you don't care about.
Yes.
And so if people walk by and give you a look,
you can't see that with that pulled down.
It does not bother me.
Yeah.
You know, but talking on clothing, things like scarves. You know, I've never seen too many homeless people in my life wear a scarf. It's not something that
usually they're
we
mobile and walk around of a night time and they keep warm that way.
That's right, we do. We keep mobile. You know, or I was one of the. There's a few different types of homeless in that area. You get the type that will bunker down between 7 and 9 o'clock.
Yeah.
Which is what I did every night.
Yeah.
You know, I like to be asleep by sort of 10, 11-ish latest.
Did you do the same thing though when you were in a car than when you were sleeping on the cement? I bet your routine changed slightly.
My routine in a car got worse. I was unable to go to sleep. On the streets, if you are in danger, you can get up and run. Whereas in a car, you can't.
Oh,
So
I would have
what
thought the
you-
opposite because you're exposed out in the cement, but you've got some protection in the car.
No, completely different.
Really?
You can't,
Wow.
You can't escape in a car. You're trapped. If somebody's standing outside your car, or if a group is standing outside your car, you're locked inside and you can't escape. You have to be able to jump into the front seat because most people in a car will sleep in the back seat.
Yeah.
So you have to jump into the front seat, trying to start the car and flee. Now that starts to pose a danger to you moving too quickly with your vehicle and hitting somebody. And then you're in real trouble.
Okay.
And so on the street, and this is why giving people too much to sleep with is not a good idea, because we want to be able to get up and move quick.
Yes.
So in the morning, you know, a swag, people think a swag is a great thing for a homeless person, but it's really not. You simply want a blanket or two.
What about the trolleys? What do they make it easier for a getaway? A trolley with your stuff to put in,
a
or
trolley's even worse because now you have to watch your trolley all night. Otherwise, people will steal things out of your trolley. And people do. They
steal them out of
trolley,
tents too.
You know, and so it's not a good idea. You want a sleeping bag and a blanket or two blankets, so you can basically jump up, because most homeless people will sleep with their backpack under their head or at their side.
Yeah.
And I've always taught other homeless people to try to tie it onto you even, to make sure if anyone grabs it, it moves your arm.
Oh,
so
I
it wakes
see.
you up, so you know someone's trying
Yes,
to grab
because your
gear.
possessions are in your backpack.
That's
I
right.
get it. Yep.
You know, but if you sleep with it under your head, it's very unlikely someone's going to try to grab it out from under your head, especially if you're twisting your arm through the backpack. I always twisted it through one of the arm lengths.
Okay, so no one can pinch it through the night. Yep.
But if you can simply jump up, grab your bag,
Yep.
and
run.
Because even if you lose a blanket or a sleeping bag, you can source another one of them fairly easily the next day. You know, whether in a charity or a food van, like St. Vincent de Paul Night Patrol van always carries blankets out, Fred's van. So you want to be able to move quick, but in the car, you're constantly now keeping your eye open. And this sounds strange, but all of a sudden you've got this new lot of worries. Someone might siphon my fuel. Someone might, if you have a car and it has something on it that somebody wants, you know, you're listening out for noises that someone's tampering with your car. You know, in my case, I had a car for, I think it was about a 4 or 5 month period. I think it was only 4 months that I had that car parked in Civic Park. You know, because I bought it at the end of the year, and I was there till just after the start of the next year before I got housed here. And so straight away, I realised that being night after night after night after night, and because I shaded the windows, nobody could see that anyone was even in the car, but all I thought was, people will see this car that's always there night after night, and they'll be like, oh, I wonder if it's stolen or dumped, and they might come and try to siphon the fuel out of it.
Yes.
And so I thought of that, and so I constantly found myself watching out the window. Now I'm awake more than I was sleeping in a doorway. You know, in a doorway, I was...
Well, was there particular places that you like to park?
Well, I only ever parked in Civic Park.
But why did you choose Civic Park? Because it was close to amenities, or, you know, was it because of there were lights there, or you felt safer there, or...?
I felt safe there because it's across from Tea Tree Plaza 1, and you've got the gym that's open 24 hours a day. And I knew there would always be people there, workers there, but more importantly, the toilet block.
Yeah.
You know, even though that was shutting at 9 to 10 p.m. at night, you know, I had a way of counteracting that. It was a matter of being in there when the security guard came along, and if you're inside the toilet, he'd come up and rattle the door and check it, and as long as it was locked, he'd drive away again.
Yeah.
And then you could simply open the door
from the inside and wedge it open.
Walk out and leave it slightly unlatched. Now, this wasn't just for me, as you know. This was for the community.
Yeah.
I've always said to people, my time camping in Civic Park, I would see people walking there 11, midnight, 1 in the morning. You get large gatherings, especially the Indian community.
Yes.
Who would gather in large numbers. I had to constantly watch people go to that toilet block